Good morning. This is Tom Wyczawski, and this is lecture 3 of 4 on the topic of executing innovation initiatives. By now, you should have my feedback from your answers to questions 3 and 4 of the Dunkin' Donuts case study. And after this lecture, combined with lecture 2, which I've already posted, you'll have the information you need to answer questions 5 and 6 of the Dunkin' Donuts case study. Please don't be at all shy about emailing me or even calling me if you have questions about the case. In this lecture, lecture 3, on the topic of executing innovation initiatives, we're going to discuss focusing sharply. If you remember from our last lecture, we talked about thinking strategically throughout execution. We got your project organized. We introduced the concept of a system, and we talked about how to paint a clear picture of the future system, the system you want to create. Systems thinking is really pretty simple. We'll talk about it more in this lecture, but it's really important for you to understand that organizations, markets, parts of organizations operate as systems, as interchangeable parts. And finding those centers of gravity or leverage points will be a topic of discussion, along with creating and evaluating options to move those centers of gravity. Then we'll narrow those options and test them quickly, if necessary. And finally, we'll help you build your business case so that you can present to the organization and gain additional momentum. You will have created a charter, but now you're moving past charter into execution with your strategies and tactics, and it's really important that you have a clear, concise business case so that you can lead your organization forward. Okay, let's start with focusing on this concept of centers of gravity or leverage points in your system. Remember, we talked about last time, you have to move fast. That time is your enemy to create change. And all along the way, the system will resist change. If you're trying to change all or part of your organization, that organization will resist your change all along the way. You may naively believe, because you have the president, CEO, or some other senior executive buying into your change, that the system won't resist, that they'll just knock down all the barriers for you. It will not happen that way. That executive, that CEO, or if that's who you are, you cannot be under the impression that you or your boss or the CEO or some other executive can knock down all these barriers. Again, this chart illustrates the point perfectly. The probability of success of your innovation initiative declines over time. And the reason why you have to be so diligent, so aggressive, so planful to execute your initiative fast is because of all of the factors that start to go against you over time. Internal opposition builds, external opposition organizes, the competition begins to react, money for your initiative gets diverted to causes that are starting to take root, the environment changes, the market changes, and finally, you as the change agent get fired or your career gets lost. So remember, it is critical that you understand these points, that both the system resists the change. It will always resist the change. People, processes are are maintaining the status quo today every single day, and they are rooted deeply in the organization's culture. So time is your enemy, and never forget that concept as you move forward. Okay, so as we continue our discussion about centers of gravity, remember from my last lecture the definition of a system. It has a leadership component, it has processes, it has infrastructure, populations that execute those processes within the infrastructure, and outside agents. What are the two characteristics of systems, though? The two main characteristics of systems is the whole accomplishes more than the parts. Think of an organization that each department in an organization helps to move the entire organization forward. And if it doesn't, that part of the organization tends to get shed. Think of a market. You have suppliers, you have producers, you have brokers, you have customers. All those components of a market are essential and come together so that that whole market can function and accomplish more than any one part. Think of a more micro example, an automobile. The tires, the engine, the chassis, the seats, etc., all accomplish more than any one of those parts would accomplish in our society. The second characteristic of a system is the performance of the whole and the performance of the parts are interdependent. If you work in a product development department, and that product development department is not functioning properly, then the organization over time will not function properly. If you are a supplier in a market and you're not able to supply and you're essential to that market functioning, saying batteries for cell phones, and all of the suppliers are having some massive technology problem and you're not functioning, that market will not function. The performance of the whole and the performance of the parts are independent. Same thing in the micro example. If your tires are flat, obviously the auto is not working. You get the idea how important systems are. Your job is to rapidly lead hard-nosed, action-oriented change across all key leverage points of the system. Typically your organization or market that you compete in, or a large subcomponent of both. Remember, your job is to lead, and you have to be hard-nosed and action-oriented and change across all the leverage points of the system. Let's talk more. So all systems have multiple centers of gravity, not just one. You can't just focus on one typically, especially if you're leading big change. All centers of gravity have to be impacted simultaneously. You have to go in a very short time frame. You have to educate leadership, change the processes, modify infrastructure, educate, train, and manage the populations, and even get your outside agents involved. All of those centers of gravity have to be changed simultaneously. Now, if it's not a center of gravity, if it's just going to come along for the ride, then you don't need to put energy against it. But simultaneous impact is actually cheaper because time has value. And simultaneous impact actually gets you a higher probability of success. So success has incredible value. Time, as we know, has value because it increases your probability of success. It also gets you a better return on your investment. So, as people argue against impacting all the centers of gravity, you have to convince them that time has value and that you have to go after all components simultaneously. In addition, by attacking multiple components at the same time, it requires less perfect tactics. Your tactics may not be perfect for one center of gravity, but because you've taken on all 3, 4, 5, 6 that are required, or 10 that are required, you give yourself a better chance for success rather than placing all your bets on one leverage point. So, to summarize, launching Simultaneous impacts across all centers of gravity in a compressed time frame gives you the highest probability of success to execute your innovation initiative. That principle is essential for you to understand. So an example, think of Pokemon. In the late 1990s, Pokemon was almost everywhere at the same time as it introduced in the U.S. market after being developed in Japan. It was introduced in movies, cartoon TV shows, trading cards, and ad blitz, radio, print ads, websites, collectibles, video games. They knew that if only half these tactics worked, that success would still occur, and success was rapid and overwhelming. It's an example of attacking multiple leverage points, multiple populations in a market, and getting thought leaders and the population and impacting the infrastructure that communicates concepts like Pokemon, all on the same page regarding this new market introduction. It's an amazing success. So what are we going to do next? Okay, we've introduced the idea of focusing on centers of gravity. All right, now we have to create and evaluate options, okay, to impact those centers of gravity. And you all, at this stage of your careers, have heard of many different types of ways to be creative. Okay, so ideation, brainstorming, mind mapping is one we're going to talk a little more about. Benchmarking competition or similar businesses who've taken on initiatives like yours. Focus groups to talk to customers or even employees or even members of a market. And customer complaints and problems. Problems are a great way to innovate. So as you tackle, and you think about how to impact all your centers of gravity, you want to think about who is going to complain about this change, who is going to be a problem. Okay? In addition, if you're attacking a market, you want to think about customers. What are they upset about? What are they complaining about? And that's another way to generate ideas, whether it's internal or external customers. So we're creating and evaluating options. Let's say we want to revolutionize the guest experience in a hotel. So how are we going to identify the centers of gravity that we're going to attack, and how are we going to do that? What options are we going to explore? Well, if we're going to attack the leadership, they're going to have to approve the charter. They're going to have to remove obstacles down the road. They're going to have to lead on communication. So it could be the leadership of the whole hotel. It could include the leadership of the various departments. In addition to that, you're going to have to impact processes. You're going to have to understand all the guest touch points. You're going to have to map those out, and you're going to have to say, okay, here's where we are now, and we're moving from that to this higher level of guest experience. Those processes could include taking the guest to the room, cooking, guest payment, etc., etc. Then you're going to have to address the infrastructure. Facility changes might be required, both to the exterior and the interior, to upgrade the guest experience. Computer systems, especially computer systems that the guest interacts with. Supplier quality. Maybe a supplier is bringing in ingredients for cooking, or is providing guest payment options, or a supplier is providing chemicals. Pardon me. Cleaning chemicals. In any of those cases, your supplier is going to have to up their game. The populations, you may have to select or unselect people from the team. You'll have to train them. You have to coach them. You may have to discipline people. You may have to. Definitely need programs to inspire them to achieve a greater level of service for the guest. And outside agents could even be involved as well. So you see, we have this system that is a hotel. We have the components of the system. And now we're starting to get at the different leverage points in those components. Just one word on mind mapping. Mind mapping is an old technique. And I want to just talk to you about it because I've used it very successfully. Mind mapping is based upon a principle that your body doesn't think, your mind doesn't think linearly. It doesn't go, think of an outline on for a story. You don't think, Roman numeral 1 and then A and then number 1 and then lowercase a and then Roman numeral 2. You don't think linearly when you outline something. You think more in stream of consciousness. Mind mapping allows you to think creatively, to brainstorm, and then to capture all those creative thoughts for you or for a larger group in a structured way. I encourage you to read the article in PC Magazine by Koblenz and Cattell. They review a variety of mind mapping softwares. And it's a great technique for you to use to capture creative thought in a logical way without undermining how the human brain thinks. Okay, we've got our centers of gravity or leverage points. We're focused on them. We're creating and evaluating options to impact them. We're narrowing those options. Now we're going to narrow those options and test them quickly. Okay, using the meeting techniques I described in prior lecture, the online and open meetings that involve many people, depending on the size of your initiative, create and narrow your options using both qualitative and quantitative techniques. Okay, so each organization has its own way of evaluating things, but think of it as a simple chart in which you have all the criteria of evaluating them that can be both qualitative and quantitative, and lay out your case for each of the different options. Okay, I'm sure most of you have done this kind of evaluation. What's great about using online and open meetings is you can get many people to chime in using the chat feature on what should be those criteria for evaluating each option, and where do we stand qualitatively and quantitatively with each option that's being discussed. You can narrow those options, and you may get down to 1 or 2 or 3 options. And the key is having a bias towards action. Many times in the hospitality business, you can test. You can test for a short period of time. You can test in one store while you leave other stores alone, or you can test, using a focus group of people. There's a lot of ways to test. The key is that you don't keep hand-wringing. You get as quickly as possible, and I'm talking about time measured in days and weeks, not months and years. You get as quickly as possible into test if you really are stuck between 2 or 3 options. So develop a test protocol quickly, train and implement that protocol, and learn quickly, or fail quickly, whatever you do. Okay, just a note about test protocols. I've added on the course documents a 6 Sigma example test protocol. It's overly complex, but it'll give you many ideas for you to develop your own test protocol. In my consulting business with Food Service Productivity Group, we do kitchen design. That's a part of our business. And when we design a new kitchen for a large chain, obviously it's very expensive to change dozens, if not hundreds of restaurants, or even thousands. So we do a live mock-up where we bring real orders in with real food and real equipment, some mocked up equipment, and then we go through that mock-up and we do live runs simulating a live restaurant environment, And we measure the results like speed of service and labor productivity and the function of equipment, etc. This enables innovation without the risk, and it allows the team to be more risky in its options it evaluates without risking the business, because you're doing it in a controlled mock-up situation. This is an example of testing when two options, or even three, seem very close in their potential. So you've completed this mock-up test, then we would go to our first restaurant, and then maybe we go to the whole chain, or we go to 2 or 3 restaurants after that. This process has worked for many, many years. In fact, many of our clients have developed very flexible mock-up locations inside their R&D facilities with flexible utilities, etc., and even a wood shop, so that they can do live mock-ups in an ongoing way. Finally, we need to build your business case. And as we build this business case, your organization probably has a template for business case that they like to use. Your finance team can help you with that, or you can go online and get one, or certainly you can ask me for them. I have many. Communication is really the heart of making an impact. Okay, you need to believe, and certainly I believe, that you're in this business, you're in this program because you're going above and beyond. You want to make an impact in your organization or in your own business, and you want to do something that's more creative, more innovative, more impactful. Well, the heart of making impact is being able to communicate your idea and the business case behind it, the business impact behind it, so that more than just you start to buy in, that you grow the constituency that is going to adapt your idea, your innovation initiative. So that business case, again, has a qualitative and quantitative component, and you have to go out and sell. Now, what's great is your open and online meetings are a great place to sell. Obviously, you have to sell to senior management. You may have to sell to, if you're in a franchise organization, to sell to franchisees. If you have a large chain organization, to store managers, get them involved. But you have to sell in your idea. So at this point, you have the information you need. You've done your testing. You know your centers of gravity. You have to rally them together. You have to present your business case, and then you have to begin to move forward. Our next lecture will be about, okay, now you have your business case, you've identified your centers of gravity. Now, how do we begin the process of making a difference, making an impact in each and every center of gravity? So, again, I have an appendix attached. I've kept the case study format here, and my initial write-up for the first 2 questions of the case study. Question 5 and 6 should be done, that's a typo, not today, by 8/20/17. I'll get feedback on questions 5 and 6 by 8/22. The lecture you just saw is about question 6. Lecture 2 is about question 5. Question 7 and final edits to all prior questions will be due 8/27/17. There'll be one more lecture that I'll post Sunday. Again, I will provide feedback all along the way to help you improve your final case study response. I made this note about grading before. You can read it at your leisure. I'm really excited about you all learning these insights about executing innovation initiatives. Take them to heart, experiment, find your own way, but understand that these principles will be at play whether you embrace them and address them or not. So it's best to embrace and address as you move forward. I look forward to my final lecture on Sunday, and to reading your case studies. Thanks very much and have a great day.